to Adjust Inc. presents If Testimony Was a Person. Today we have a longtime healer, social worker, LCSW, that is, licensed clinical social worker, professor, advocate for people, school professional,
Right.
founder of a 501c3, amongst many other accomplishments. I would like you to meet Mr. Arron Muller.
Thank you, Don.
Yeah, man,
Thank you.
my pleasure. And it is great to have you here. And I like to think that I'm a big part of your history because I reached
Yes.
out to you on LinkedIn maybe 8 years ago and said, we need you in private practice. And you came in
Yes.
and did a wonderful job with our clientele back then, grew to start your own practice. Your business partner is your wife,
Right.
right? And you've done so much since then. So tell me about your journey since graduating from Adelphi as a social worker.
Well, it's been quite a journey. First, I want to publicly thank you for allowing me into your establishment, and I learned a lot from you. And I think it's important that we give each other flowers when people are alive. So I appreciate the start you gave me here at Help to Adjust. A lot of clients that I saw while I was at Help to Adjust, I'm still seeing today. Just long-standing clients. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and I really appreciate it.
I am
But
honored to be part of your journey.
yes, definitely, definitely. It's I was talking to my wife all the time. Just my son was a few months when I started working here. And he's gonna be 6. I remember, and I started before he was born.
right.
Because I was working here, and my wife was working someplace else, and we was working 2 different places and stuff like that. So I remember the journey along the way. So I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah.
But starting at Adelphi, you know what? I'm not a extreme academic person, but I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew I wanted to be a social worker. So as I sat in those seats, I was like, I just thought about the impact I wanted to make and how I wanted to present. So I wanted to be the social worker in the jeans and the sneakers. I'm sure you saw me come here many times. I didn't want the traditional look and shirt and tie. I didn't want to present as that, and I just knew how important black male social workers and black male therapists, how important that was. So when you contacted me, I was so impressed. I was like, wow, a black male therapist has this practice. I was like, nah, I got to be a part of that. So since that time, that's kind of been my journey ever since. And everything that I fantasized and that I said I wanted to do when I graduated, I actually accomplished that. So I'm very grateful and blessed for that.
So let me ask you, when I talk to people by and large about social workers, often I'm talking about lay people who are not in the field. Often they believe a social worker is a kind of a almost like part of the establishment or part of the system. They take away your kids and
Right.
they, watch what you do at school and, report things to agencies.
Right.
And when you were becoming a social worker, what did you learn that said, I want to do this?
Well, when I started to go to school, I knew that social workers ran programs and agencies because I was working in drug treatment. I was working at a drug addiction program, a methadone program specifically. So all the directors were social workers. So
I see.
So my impression was, wow, you could really be a boss and run organizations. So that's when I first became attracted to the program of social work. I said, I think that's something I want to do, and to kind of further enhance my clinical skills. So I was like, wow, you could do both. And I always wanted to run organizations. So that's what kind of led me to the profession.
Right. So, young people, if you are thinking about being a mental health professional, social worker is one of the major designations you can receive. It doesn't mean somebody who harms people or works with the police or any authorities in that respect. It means those who heal and those who lead. And I think that you would be a great resource to talk to people about what you do, because as a black social worker, I think the leadership role, or I should say, as black mental health professionals, the leadership role is on us to make sure that people know what these fields are about and make sure that we are doing what we can to give back and teach in the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So after Delphi, what did you do immediately?
After Delphi, graduated, I passed the licensure exam, and I started working at Montefiore. Well, it was first, it was Montefiore Community Mental Health Center in the Bronx. So I was commuting to the Bronx every day, and that's where I was working intensely with schizophrenia, bipolar, those disorders.
Early career choices, working in methadone clinic, and what you just described. I mean, those are tough jobs,
Right.
and sometimes when people have early exposure to those jobs, they're afraid of burnout, and it drives them away from the field. So it's great that you had the vision to know that there was more options in the
Right.
field. Yeah. Say a little bit more about that.
It was something I said, wow, this, is really a need for, cultural competency. Having a therapist that understands, even though they have a diagnosis, that there's a cultural component that's so important. And when you're working with families, that they understand from a very cultural lens about what they're dealing with and what the family's going through and how it affects the entire family. So that's very important.
Right. And then you are a father, and also in this profession, also working in schools. How does that inform your fatherhood, your parenting?
Man, having a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old is a lot,
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, but I'm very conscious about how I show up and how I present as a dad.
Yeah.
And being emotionally available, physically available.
Yeah.
I see a lot of kids that don't have their father, just in practice and in school. So I just, reassure and make sure I love my kids that much more.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, I also believe that being in the mental health field and being a school counselor for a long time and working with youth has helped me to realize how important it is to be a very strong and loving presence for my children, So how did you end up going into the schools to be a school social worker?
Well, when I talked about when I sat in the Delphi seats, one of the things I wanted to do, being a school social worker was one of them.
Yeah.
And my aunt was a family assistant, so she worked in the shelter helping families that, in terms of making sure that their kids are going to school every day, things like that. She always say, I want to get you in the school. You need to be in a school. And she carried her resume in her bag every day to anybody that would listen. And she came across Catherine Polite she overseen the students in temporary housing. And we have a large number of students in New York City that are in temporary housing.
Correct.
And what the city did was, when the program first started, they hired 33 social workers to go into specific schools in New York City to provide support to those students in the school that are in temporary housing. And then I got hired as one of those social workers from the first 33. Now it's grown to about 100 social workers because the need is just great. So I started that in 2016.
Yeah, yeah. So when you talk about kids who are at risk or kids that are dealing with particularly tough
Right.
circumstances, you are very familiar with that.
Absolutely. We're talking about compounded
Yeah,
situations. So, on an everyday basis. So just one, primarily the role is supporting the students, supporting the family, but also educating the staff about what the students are going through, because that's also being informed, right? Trauma informed, and how being mindful about how we approach not just those students but every student, because every student is there with trauma, of some sort. But
yeah,
just being informed, it goes a long way in terms of why you late, kind of reframe it. Thank you for coming in. And just being for mindful about that. You don't know what the child experienced the night before
or even that
or
morning.
even that morning,
Yeah,
right? So just being mindful about that, and just
hmm
and being more gentle, and having compassion in our approach.
yeah. Gentle parenting, gentle schooling.
Yeah.
It's it's very true what you're saying that and I have found that staff in schools can benefit a lot from professional development in the way of mental health because even though people are there to help students, they still they don't have the training or sometimes just the capacity emotionally to be as good as they could be for the students.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Right. So one thing, and recognizing that, um, one thing I want to encourage, in the teachers that I do in my school is about their own wellness, because you can't pour from an empty cup. We say that all the time. So I'm
yeah,
constantly, reassuring, checking in. I've implemented and encourage administration to have certain strategies and things in place. So, I've conducted professional developments around mental wellness for the staff. I've created a mindfulness room in the school. So, through donations, things like that. So, and ensure that every student learn yoga. So every student got a yoga mat. I'm just bringing wellness into the school environment. So every morning, um, they have to recite the meta mantra. So may I be happy, may I be healthy, may you be happy. So they
oh,
recite that every morning. So I believe that wellness starts from the culture of the facility or the building.
absolutely,
So whether it be an
absolutely,
office or school, and it starts from administration on down. So just implementing those things is, and that's why social workers are so important about creating those systems, creating those practices
within the
within the school
facility.
system,
Yeah,
and right,
yeah,
and ensuring that wellness is understood throughout the entire school community.
absolutely. It's very important, and a lot of times, teachers are under the kind of pressure to, especially in the high schools, to get test scores
Right.
up
And
and
performance. Right. Yeah.
right, yeah, their their performance is based on data, which have to do with test scores and mostly mostly that. And so I have heard teachers say, "My job is to teach, and I'm not a social worker."
Mm.
And in some way, you do have to pull in. I believe you have to pull in some of those skills because
Absolutely.
to be a teacher, right, you need to take a child development course, but that one child development course is not quite enough. And some of the skills that you would bring to the table, teaching teachers how to implement that in the classroom and create a more positive environment for the kids. The mindfulness, the just unconditional positive regard, and not finger pointing, but asking kids how you're doing and seeing if you can get them to talk out what's happening with them or go to talk out what's happening with them rather than um, making them wrong for whatever's happening.
Right. And also being mindful about, um our approach and just understanding how the brain operates and how the brain works, and when children experience trauma and how it shifts and changes the brain,
Yeah.
and how children respond to that, right? So there may be impulsivity, hyperactivity, and then here we goes back to cultural competency. A lot of our children are possibly labeled with ADHD, and it could possibly just be trauma
Yeah.
that they're experiencing, because it mirrors in terms of behaviors that's displayed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's often the discussion about how men manifest depression with irritability,
Absolutely.
and to some people, looking at that, if you're not aware of it, you might think it's an anger management issue
Right. Or
or something
a
else.
mood disorder, right? So we know
Right.
why we know why black men are labeled with bipolar
Mm-hmm.
um, at a fast rate, right?
Right.
Without any appropriate diagnostic tool or anything. They're like, all right, bipolar, right?
Mm-hmm.
From but not taking into account, it could be depression or just be systemic racism, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And so you get a lot of credit for leadership too. You have started some groups, and tell me about the group that you started mostly on social media to get black counselors, social workers together.
Right. So I started Black Male Therapist because I felt like it was isolated, especially, here in New York. I felt like it was not that many. And I felt like we needed to all collaborate, work together, and not work separately, So
Yeah.
share resources, connect, and things of that nature. So I created Black Male Therapist Facebook group, and it allowed therapists from far as California and therapists from Florida and in between all to meet and collaborate and form connections. And from black male therapists, they have created subsets of that. So there's like one in Charlotte, and there's a coalition of brothers in Atlanta, and other smaller subgroups have been created just from black
That's
male
great.
therapists. So just I'm a person, if I recognize a need, I want to create it. That's kind of like how I'm like, let me just do
We need that. Well, thank you for that.
it.
Um, and so, is there a conference associated with the group?
So the conference is through my nonprofit, Modified Wellness, and it's in collaboration with the Delphi School of Social Work, where I attended. And we started last year was the first conference, and this year we're having it again Saturday, April 15th, and it's called Breaking the Ice. So we're emphasizing King. It's a black male mental health conference with all black male panelists,
Okay.
black male therapist panelists,
That
and
is excellent.
we thought that's very important. Want to highlight that there, black male therapists out here, encourage other black males to get into the field, but also I feel like it's important that we are coming from a lens from people that have the knowledge. There's a lot of conferences that are going on now, and it's great, but I think we have to be mindful about what's being sent out there to everyone. Especially, this is mental health, right? This is not just a hobby or anything like that. These are people's lives. So I think it's important that it's coming from those that did the work, studied, and can able to share their knowledge, their experience, their research that they've done,
Yeah.
specifically from a black male therapist lens. I think it's important. A lot of research comes from various other races, but it's like this is coming from a black male therapist lens that's going to be speaking. They've done research, and they're going to come in and talk about their findings, and we're going to have breakout rooms, and therapists can get continual ed credits for a really affordable rate. Like I've seen upwards of $150.
Yeah.
So this is a $30 session, $30 for continual ed credits, which we need every year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, our voices need to be heard, and you creating that platform for our voices is excellent. And so the nonprofit how'd you come up with the name Modify Wellness, and tell me a little bit about what you do?
So Modify Wellness, and my wife supported me in coming up with that name, trying to find uh, kind of uplift, shift, and we know modify means to kind of shift and upgrade and make changes, and that's kind of what I wanted to modify our wellness. We have an idea of what wellness look like, but kind of going around and going to organizations and different programs and actually providing education on what wellness looks like. So that's where Modify Wellness came from.
That's
And
excellent.
this is the second year we're doing the Black Male Therapist Conference alongside the Delphi School of Social Work and my co-organizer Shanika Pickens. She's a social worker as well. We've been working side by side to make this conference happen.
Yeah, that's excellent. And do you have plans for the 501c3 that are beyond the conference?
Absolutely. I'm trying to take it easy too, because I could be all over the place.
Yeah.
But I definitely would love to kind of maybe take these conferences to different colleges, and also partner with other organizations and have different events. The New York City has my brother's not my brother's keeper, but Brothers Drive, Sisters Drive. I've done conversations around the city with that initiative, so I'm actually bringing that back also.
Okay.
So I'm going to be doing a Brothers Drive, Sisters Drive initiative, which is getting brothers to talk and sisters to talk about mental health too. So there'll be little pop-ups of those conversations in Brooklyn and Queens.
Yeah. All right. That's excellent. And you know, the nonprofit space is important. I mean, we started a nonprofit, the Speak Hope Foundation, and we are simply right now trying to help people to pay for mental health services, because even these copays can be
A
difficult,
challenge, yeah.
for people. So that's our mission, and education about mental health, taking it to schools, taking it to all over the city, wherever we can do it. That's always part of it.
Yeah.
So that's great. And what other? I mean, you have a rich professional life, because you are a school social worker by day. You are a professor at least some weeks during the evening,
Right.
at your alma mater, right?
Right.
At Adelphi.
Right.
And you run the foundation and see people
And see,
for
right.
private
Right.
practice. So this is like, when do you sleep?
Right. I find time to sleep. I
Uh-huh.
find time to sleep. And I'm also radio is another passion of mine. I if I didn't do social work, I wouldn't want to be like a radio jockey, something like that. So, I do Man Mondays on a Christian radio station. It's called the Jamal Bates Morning Show, and I do Man Mondays every Monday, and it comes on in Augusta, Georgia, and in Florence, South Carolina. And I do different topics just related to Black men and mental health. So I do one every Monday, and I enjoy that too. So I don't know when I find the time to do all of that, but everything that you kind of stated that I'm doing is everything that I wanted to do,
Right.
and it just kind of just happened, just I don't know how, it just kind of just manifested that way, and I'm appreciative of that.
Yeah.
So I just try to make it happen. Set boundaries, of course, the balance, family, prioritize. And it's a scheduling. Scheduling is really important. I have a pretty rigorous kind of schedule. So, in the house, my wife has a schedule, I have a schedule, and we kind of just, because she's working too, she sees clients as well. So we kind of just figure it out.
Does your wife have a full-time job in addition to the private practice?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So you guys are busy.
Yeah.
So you're parenting, both doing full-time, then you are doing your private practice amongst the other projects you mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah. And So, in your private practice, do you have a specialty? Like, is there a preference of who you like to help because you feel like you do your best work with those?
Right. So I pretty much serve the entire family. I kind my kind of I in my mission is to kind of restoration and kind of I feel fulfilled with the children, adults, couples. So I see everybody. Um, and that's kind of how it's been. So I wouldn't, even though I do a lot of work centered around um, black male mental health, and have Black Kings Need Therapy too, and all of that. But I actually have more women clients.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. I mean,
but it's changing though. Actually, as I'm getting a lot more calls
oh
from
my
black men.
gosh, the calls that we used to get saying I need a male therapist. Sometimes women would want a male therapist because they wanted a different
Right.
perspective from their mom or their aunts, and they might have been in a relationship and they wanted to hear from on the therapeutic side from the other side of the fence, a man, and then you would have people calling for a man to see their son,
Right.
their husband, their
For
brother.
sure.
Sometimes I would call it spouse mandated
You're
counseling
right.
because sometimes a woman would say, I'm at my last wits with this relationship, and if he doesn't come to you,
Yes. That's
I'm
it.
out the door. And
Yes.
so, you would get a guy calling like, I think my lady called you,
Yes.
and I'm willing to do this.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they would come in very hesitantly, but would realize that the sessions are a safe space and would be like, "Oh, this is
Yes.
good." And I've had people tell me later, "This is one of the best things I've ever done for
Yes.
myself." You know.
And that's beautiful. Right. Just to get through, that initial angst about it, but then
Yeah.
once they, sit in the seat, and feel settled, that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so if you believe that counseling is something that um, you're going to come in and be corrected, you're going to come in and be judged and scolded for all of the wrong that you do. On the contrary, a good counselor will um, pull you close and help you to process yourself, the things that are your challenges in a non-judgmental zone. So remember, counseling is not about us judging or picking you apart. Um, so that's a great thing. And you know, when a family comes to you and says, or do you have people that come and say, we want family counseling? How do you approach that?
I've had, I wouldn't say I've had too many, but I've had a fair number of family counseling, and I take it because I understand the importance of it. But even if someone comes from an individual, I may say I want to see, once we get the permission and the consent, I want to meet the people that's important to you as well. And sometimes it
Yeah.
turns into a family session, where coming in where there's one person that really needs that support. So I've had a number of those sessions
Yeah.
of where it's just so necessary. And as a therapist, it's also important that we recognize that, that ensuring that our clients pull on their community once they feel safe and identify who those key players are. And once the client feels okay, that can we, how you feel about including them, and they feel, really comfortable about that. And even the family members getting tools and understanding how to support their loved one. So I think that's also important. That's where the education piece comes in.
Yeah. That's excellent that if you are treating one person that you say, I would like to meet the wife or your son or whoever it is
Yeah.
that are the major players in the equation, because the family is a system. the person is a whole, but yet part of a
Part of
system,
it, right?
and it can be very helpful. I believe I've had people say I want a family session, and they want, you know, the wife, the husband, the son, and two daughters to sit down in a room, and I have found that before you help the situation a little bit, it can be overwhelming because for so many parts of the system to be in the room at the
The
same
same
time,
time,
all
right?
trying to express, what ails them at that moment, it can be a little chaotic, but I do think that it's necessary to get other people in who are part of that family system that's trying to grow.
Right. And
Um,
especially when you have, if you're doing individuals, right, individual session, and the person really wants to work on themselves,
yeah.
um, oftentimes they don't really know how they show up in the world.
Ah,
So it's important to get that perspective, because they may tell you, "Oh no, I'm good," or I'm not. I said, you don't have a mirror to your face. You don't know how you show up. So it's important to have someone, and then we could create that space allow the person to share, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. If one person is quote unquote doing better than the other, like if somebody's drinking too much, the the other, the one who may be judgmental, the other who may be even a little aggressive about approaching the person, they their aggression or their judgmentalness is really not an issue when somebody is an alcoholic,
Right.
right? And so it's correct that often it's very helpful to put a mirror to everybody so everybody can be their best self. So you have some projects also that are that you haven't mentioned. You've actually had some recognition, let's say from Black Enterprise magazine a few
Oh,
years
right, right.
ago. You were on a couple of reality shows. Talk about some of the things that you've done in that regard, the recognition that you've received.
Oh yeah, so Black Enterprise magazine, that was a great thing to be acknowledged. And then I was also featured as 15 black male therapists you should know.
Right.
That was an amazing experience. And just being on different reality shows and seeing how they find therapists so important, and then black representation, black male therapist representation is so important. Um, I've had the opportunity to meet some, really great people in the industry too, just from my platform. And the doctors, my wife and I was on talking about like
Oh yeah.
love and relationships and News 12 and Hot 97, just connecting, hip hop and that generation and introducing them to mental health. That was pretty amazing, and like just platforms that I've watched as a or been on or seen as a child, like ABC News
Yeah.
and Oprah Daily. Like I wouldn't imagine like a little black boy from Queens, would be in these
Yeah.
publications.
Yeah. I
So
can imagine.
yeah,
Wonderful. I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword because I believe that in one way, the MTV, reality TV, social media generation has possibly made bigger some of the mental health issues that exist. I mean, everybody is kind of like a fish in a fish tank with social
yeah,
media, and bullying went from what happens in the classroom or outside the school to now online.
good to see it. Yeah,
Yeah, it can happen. But one thing I do think is that what you kind of alluded to, which is that people have exposure to shows where black therapists are represented on the show. Um, it has, I think, been normalized. Love and Hip Hop, the Braxtons, and a lot of shows
Yeah, it
feature
features. Yeah,
therapists
yeah,
helping people,
yeah.
and on the radio, there's been Black mental health professionals. I've appeared a couple of public places and in writing where um, the therapy is very much normalized, and I think that that's helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Right. We've come a mighty long way.
yeah,
Um, Even when I first started, I had helped to adjust in terms of just the conversation and just in social media. It's become just in terms of just conversation about it, and especially specifically for Black men.
people don't raise an eyebrow about it, like, oh wow, they're talking about this. It's
No,
kind of
no,
normal.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of normal for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And if people want to reach you um, through your any of your organizations that you're affiliated with on social media, any of your websites, give them those handles so that they can reach you.
So I'm very interactive on my Instagram, which is the black underscore therapist on Instagram, and I try to connect to the people and have dialogue and conversations, and try to be relatable, and I think people are really receptive and
That's good.
appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. So that's your preferred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Um, like, subscribe, and share. Connect with us on all social media platforms. Help to Adjust Inc. If testimony was a person. Thank you, Arron Muller.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate it. Thank you again. I have to definitely honor you and help to adjust to helping me to where I am today for sure.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.